It's not entirely the media at fault. Now, a lot of people ask me, what do you mean the media? And journalists especially get angry because they're like, we're all very different. Okay, hold on. The media is typically a reference to big media entities, big corporate players that tend to have the same view and the same opinion. Basically, the outlets that were wrong on Covington. Okay, they're big, prominent outlets, the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, etc. Obviously, the media refers to literally everyone, including myself. So when I say it's not entirely the fault of the media that people are getting news wrong, the point I'm trying to make is these big media companies get things wrong, but often disinformation is spread on purpose by activist organizations for several reasons. I believe the ACLU, which used to be a great bastion of civil rights, I believe privately they know the truth. I believe privately the ACLU is worried, but they don't care because, in the end, money. That's what it's all about. This is Races, Texas, with this heartbreaking story. Marvin, a 32-year-old man from El Salvador, died in front of his 8-year-old daughter this morning in a CBP detention center. The mother of their child is not yet reunited with her grieving daughter. This is the 8th death in CBP custody in 9 months. Rip Marvin. What do you think people hear, or what do you think people think when they hear a story like this? Oh, they're outraged. In fact, we can see. The first response, where the UN? Crimes against humanity. Trump is killing the immigrants and no one is stopping him. The U.S. will never erase the stain of Donald Trump. This cannot go on that way. This is wrong. Support the ACLU. Oh, it all goes on and on and on. Hold the CBP accountable. Well, you know what? I can't blame these people for being angry. They're being lied to and manipulated. They're not being presented the facts, so they can't make decisions on their own. This is willful manipulation, in my opinion. And now let's look at how things trickle down. Ocasio-Cortez. To the folks outraged at the academics and experts naming our concentration camp system what it is, what else do you call camps where parents die as their children watch? Discomfort at the truth should spur us to change. Denial prioritizes our comfort over people's lives. Fake news. Will Chamberlain chiming in with the response. This is contemptible, Congresswoman. Marvin was taken into CBP custody at 9 p.m. on Wednesday. He fell into medical distress and died Thursday morning. How dare you compare that to the Holocaust? You and everyone amplifying this should be ashamed. Well, I agree with Will. The issue here is ignorance. Now, I have to assume Races knows what happened with this story. A man was brought in. As they were processing, he became medically distressed and shortly thereafter died. It was nothing to do with CBP. In fact, if CBP didn't bring him in, he probably would have died in the desert or wilderness. I don't know why it's so hard to talk about, but I have to assume it's bad faith. It's malicious. Okay, look, regular people don't like suffering. Okay, regular people, I was reading this thing about sociopathy. And what they would do is they would show someone a video of someone else getting hurt. When a human being watches another human being get hurt, they have an involuntary reaction where they can feel that pain, sort of. We empathize with each other. Humans survived and are successful because we do care about each other. There's been conflict, there's been war, and ideology has caused great pain and conflict. But in our communities, when we look to other humans, we have empathy, sympathy, and we can sort of feel like, ooh, maybe you've experienced that. There was this thing I read where it said, sociopaths don't experience that. They can watch someone be hurt and they have no response and no reaction. They just don't care. When I look at a story like this, I have to wonder why they're willing to cause so much damage and harm. Maybe it's because it's political motivation. The ends justify the means, so they're willing to lie, cheat, and steal to get what they want. But the point I'm trying to bring up, what I want to say is, of course, we as normal people don't want this man to suffer. But this story is not that. It's a guy who came to the U.S. looking for a better life. He did it illegally. He was apprehended and died shortly thereafter. There's no evidence, at least as far as I know, to suggest CBP had anything to do with it. And in fact, if we want to break it down to its most base components, this man was better off being detained by CBP because they were able to at least try to help him, as opposed to letting him and many others just die on the border. But think about this. People are coming to the U.S., whether we want them to or not. Some people on the left want them to. People on the right don't want them to. People in the middle mostly don't want them to either. When we saw that just heartbreaking photo of the little girl and her dad drowned in the water, everybody was upset. It's Trump's fault they died. Then we have a story of a guy who, right when he's brought in, gets sick and dies. It's Trump's fault too. No matter what happens, that's how the framing is. The reality is the people are choosing to do this. There's an individual responsibility. They don't have to come here. Some people are in fear for their lives. I can understand, respect, sympathize, and empathize with that, and I believe the U.S. has every responsibility to provide asylum to those who are facing death. We can't leave people to die. Like when that senator went across the border and brought the pregnant woman with complications to the border, in that individual circumstance, I don't know what else he could do. You can't just stare at someone and say, okay, die. Granted, maybe he could have brought them to a Mexican hospital. I don't know why he had to bring them to the United States. But sure, thinking on your feet, he did what he thought was right. I'm not going to put pressure on a guy who was trying to save a life. In the long run, though, we have to recognize people are choosing to come here. The bigger issue now is we're going to have media outlets regurgitate the talking point, push the opinion, not the fact, and people are going to assume it's real, it's reality. When in reality, the story is quite nuanced. So let's actually read what happened. Now, before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's a PayPal option, a crypto option, a physical address. You get it. The best thing you can do, share this video. YouTube deranks independent political commentary. And as I often am critical of the media and the narrative espoused by activists, if we're going to get this kind of information out, I rely on word of mouth. YouTube is propping up the big corporate players, so that's just the way it's going to be. But here, let's see what actually happened. I did break it down for you a little bit. They say, from NBC News, Salvadoran migrant dies in Border Patrol custody. A 32-year-old Salvadoran man died in New Mexico on Thursday while in the custody of CBP, the agency said. But let's get to the details. They say, the man, who was not identified in the statement, had been taken into custody around 9 p.m. Wednesday by El Paso Station Border Patrol agents and was being processed at the station in Lordsburg when he fell into medical distress, CBP said. The agency said attempts to revive the man were unsuccessful, and it expressed condolences to his family. CBP said it was committed to the health, safety, and humane treatment of those in our custody, and that the death was under review. The DHS Security Office of the Inspector General, the government of El Salvador, and members of Congress have been notified about the death, the statement said. The man's death comes after the deaths of multiple migrants in immigration custody in recent months, including several children. In late June, a 43-year-old Salvadoran man who had crossed into the United States with his daughter collapsed at a border patrol station in Texas and later died at a hospital after being held about a week in custody. So let's look at that story real quick. It sounds like a man was malnourished, dehydrated, and sick before he got to CBP, who then tried to save his life. Unfortunately, they weren't able to. Is that CBP's fault? No, they tried saving this person. Now, look, I'm not going to argue against the reports that CBP has disgusting and terrifying facilities. I think there's more than enough reporting from real journalists to say we do have facilities that are bad or overcrowded, and we need to do something about it. Not every facility is bad. We have seen, government tours, but I'm wary of Potemkin villages. I'm also wary of activist narratives. The point is, the truth is usually closer to the middle. I believe it's likely we have a lot of facilities that are fine, do have good resources, and I believe there are some that probably aren't. They're probably bad. But when it comes to the facilities near the southern border, they're probably bad for one reason. We need funding. And Democrats have blocked that funding. So it's good to hear now that some Democrats are getting on board. But let's wrap this up. Ocasio-Cortez smearing CBP at the same time refusing to give them money it doesn't quite make sense, does it? When you think about it from a pragmatic point of view of trying to actually solve the problem, it seems like AOC is acting in erratic and chaotic ways. If you want these people to be safe and healthy, well, then we need to provide funding. But she's denying it, saying not $1. When you actually try to analyze what she's doing, it really does make sense. Deny funding to CBP, then when they're understaffed, overworked, and the conditions are terrible, you can then take a picture and say, see, look how bad it is, and thus push your political agenda forward. But let me ask you this. It's unfortunate that this man died. It's heartbreaking. The stories of him, the children, and the others who didn't make it. But what's the alternative? And I've asked this before. Do we just say, it's all you? Should CBP let the guy go for it and then collapse and die? No matter what CBP does, they are going to be blamed by the left. And this is a problem. If we want to solve the problem and protect life, we need to be pragmatic about what's happening and be honest. But unfortunately, there are people who, in my opinion, just want political power and aren't being honest. Now, of course, I can say it a million times. Of course, there are people on the right. I am no fan of Mitch McConnell. I do not like that guy. But I'm talking about immigration right now. And as far as I can see, the Republicans are saying, let's secure the border, disincentivize the behavior, and provide funding to the facilities. Well, that would be a Trump win. Fine. I don't care. I'm more concerned about people like Marvin and these children. If Trump wins, I don't care if Trump wins. I don't care if he gets to he puts a notch on his bedpost about his victories over the Democrats. I care if we're protecting the people who are risking their lives and who are sick and dying. We can talk about disincentivizing the behavior, sure, but let's make sure these people survive. If the Democrats don't want to, the Democrats do want to support this now, though they were late to the party. Credit where it's due for them finally getting on board. But throwing some shade directly at AOC, she is still of the opinion we shouldn't fund any of it. We should abolish ICE. And they've called, Ilhan Omar, I believe, called CBP a rogue agency. Think about the alternative. Let Marvin stagger through the desert with no water and then collapse and die in the middle of nowhere. Is that the solution? It's not. The best outcome is to bring these people to a facility where they're better off because you could die from dehydration, malnourishment, exposure, or just an illness. You know, if you don't have proper treatment, antibiotics, whatever you might need. In the care of CBP, even if it's not perfect, they're better than being in the middle of nowhere. Now, I will stress there is serious concern. If these people are sick and they're being brought to overcrowded facilities, that will make things worse. But then the question is it better to leave someone sick and dying out in the middle of nowhere? I honestly can't tell you what the answer is. I think the answer is no. I think we need to provide funding to CBP, secure the border, and do something that makes sense. At least Obama agreed with that. Trump agreed with that. I don't know what the Democrats are doing today. I really don't get it. I don't. But so long as they're talking about decriminalizing border crossings and then saying it's a civil penalty, what does that even mean? What are you proposing? Just tell people if you come, you won't be arrested? What will happen? And Julian Castro says, well, there'll be fences, there'll be border patrol, but for what? It's not a crime. It's a fine. So when someone comes in, you just hand them a ticket and they carry on their merry way? I don't know what the solution is. I really don't. What I can say is, at least for now, the immediate problems are not being solved by fear-mongering and baseless attacks by the left and by activist organizations that are blaming CBP for a guy who died literally when he showed up. It wasn't it wasn't CBP custody that did this. It was the journey, most likely. Perhaps the man was coming here because he was sick. Sad story. Okay, we saw the pregnant woman with complications trying to come to the U.S. because she was at risk of dying, and I can respect trying to save someone's life. Perhaps this man said, I'm sick and gonna die, I better go to the U.S. At any rate, whatever reason, he was sick before CBP picked him up. Now, sure, maybe there's some conspiracy, I really doubt it, where a CBP guy did something, I really doubt it. It's just the story we're gonna keep hearing. Migrants are trying to come here. Some will die on the journey. They'll blame Trump. Some will be picked up and then die shortly after, and they will blame Trump. There's really no solution to this. Maybe Trump needs to just say, fine, open all the doors and let everybody out. Go for it. Is that what the Democrats want? In fact, maybe Trump should say to the Democrats, tell me what to do, and we'll do it. Okay, and they'll say, let everybody out. You got it. Because if the answer was provide aid to these people, AOC would vote on the bill to do it. No, the squad, the far-left Democrats, are refusing to. So certainly the answer isn't giving humanitarian aid to these people. I don't know what they want. I really don't. Because the Democrats and the Republicans have finally agreed. Humanitarian aid, fund the bill. Instead, the far left is saying, no, no, no. Okay, AOC, look, if you want to criticize CBP for this, you better come up with some real explanations and some real solutions. Instead, all she's doing is whipping everyone into a frenzy, as is racist. But I'll leave it there. Next segment will be at 4 p.m., youtube.com/Timcast. Stick around, and I will see you then.